Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be continuing my data structures and algorithm series with this new video on the Quicksort algorithm. Now the Quicksort algorithm is one of the most efficient sorting algorithms out there. In fact, it's the fastest sorting algorithm. So if you really want to focus on the time complexity or about how fast the algorithm actually goes, then this is like the sorting algorithm that you're going to be looking for. Now, before we get right into the code and how to implement this in Python, I'm just going to give you like a brief explanation of how the algorithm works. So, first we're going to have like a quicksort function, and this is going to take a list in as an input, okay? And we're going to be sorting this list. So, provided that the list doesn't have only 1 or 0 elements, because then it's already sorted, right? So otherwise, the function would then choose a pivot element. Now, in Quicksort, the pivot element, it's kind of going to be like this main central idea here, because the pivot element is gonna help us sort the list. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to divide the list up into 2 sections. 3 sections actually. Either it's less than pivot, it is pivot, or it's more than pivot. So that's like the number that we're going to be using. So the function is going to create 2 empty lists, less and greater, to hold the elements less than or greater than the pivot. Now, the function is going to loop through all the elements in the array except for the pivot, and then it's going to add each element to either the less or greater list, depending on whether it's less than or greater than the pivot. Then the function is going to recursively sort the less and greater lists by calling itself upon each sublist. So it's going to concatenate the sorted sublist with the pivot in between. So what that means is that we're going to have a lesser list with the elements less than the pivot. We're going to add that to pivot, and then we're going to add the greater list. So in the end, we're going to have a sorted list, and this is going to be like a recursive function. Again, a recursive function is where you're going to call the function when you're defining the function. And to prevent an infinite loop, we're going to have kind of this condition at the top preventing it from, preventing the loop for running forever. Now, let's see how we can do this in Python, okay? So the actual code here, we're going to say, we're going to define a function, quicksort, and that's going to take in nums here. Now, if the length of nums is less than or equal to 1, at that point it's either there's only 1 element in the list or there are 0 elements. So that means that the list is already sorted, because there's not really much to sort there if it's only 1 element, or no elements at all for that matter. So we're just going to return the list if this happens. This is also going to play a crucial part in the recursion, which I'm going to show you later. Now, we're going to define a variable pivot. And pivot is going to be the last, it's going to be the last element in the list. Okay, so it's going to be the last number. And if we want to index the last number, we're going to use -1 as the index. And now we're going to make 2 lists, less and greater. Now we're going to put all the numbers less than the pivot in the less list, and we're going to put all the numbers greater than pivot in the greater list. Okay, but right now these lists are going to be empty. And now we're going to run the for loop, where we are going to actually sort all the numbers into these 2 lists. So for I in range, length of nums -1. So if our list nums is, let's say it's 8 elements long here, we are going to run this 7 times. This is because we don't actually want to count pivot itself. So because that's kind of like the number that we're using. It's gonna kind of be like, it's gonna be the number that we're gonna compare every other number to. Okay, so if the number is less than pivot, we are going to append that number to the less than list. Otherwise, if that number is greater than pivot, then we're gonna append it to the greater than list. And in the end, what we're gonna do is we're gonna quicksort the less list, and then we're gonna quicksort the greater list too. So now we're gonna do this thing called recursion, where we're gonna repeat the function. Now, let's say the less than list is only 4 elements long now. Now we're gonna run the function again, and this time it's gonna be even less. And so eventually at the end, we're gonna end up with a bunch of little sublists with just one element each or no elements at all. And that way we're gonna sort everything at that base level, and then we're gonna concatenate or add everything back together, and that's what this thing is gonna do. So we're gonna add the lesser segment, then we're gonna add pivot, which is kind of, pivot is gonna be like the middle number that we're gonna use to compare to every other number, and then we're gonna have the greater list. So in the end, this is how it's all gonna look. When we run this, it's gonna be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So again, we're sorting the list. Now let me explain a little bit more in depth of how this is gonna work with a little like examples. We're gonna iterate through the list itself. So in this example, what's gonna happen is we're gonna use this list. And so this part isn't gonna be too long. I just want to show you how this actually works. It's like kind of like a debugging process, right? So I can show you what really happens inside the computer. So what Python is doing here. So for I in range, the length of numbers -1. So this, what we're trying to say here is for I in range 7, because that's the value here. So now this just means that we're gonna compare every single number to pivot, except pivot itself, of course, which is why we're not doing 8. So if the current number is less than pivot, so let's say the current number right now is gonna be 6, because that's the first element in the list. Then if that's we're gonna decide if that's less than or greater than the pivot. Now the pivot itself is gonna be, just for simplicity's sake, we're just gonna make it the last element in the list, right? Because that's the element that we're not counting. So 2. So is 6 greater than 2 or less than 2? So it's greater. So now we're gonna append 6 to greater, right? So now greater is gonna be 6. Right now it's just 6. Now we're gonna see if 3 is less than or greater than. So 3 is also greater than pivot, so it's gonna be 6, and then it's gonna be 3. And now let's see if 5 is greater. So 5 is also greater, so we're gonna add 6, 3, 5, and now we're gonna do 8, and so on and so forth until we get to the number that's actually smaller than the pivot, which is 1 here. So we're not gonna count that. So since here, let's say our number is 1, and since 1 is less than the pivot, we're going to add that to the lesser than list. So it's going to be 1 here, 1. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to quicksort this list. And so now we're gonna choose a pivot from this list, and we're gonna sort this list, and we're gonna keep doing that until we've broken this up into a bunch of sublists that we can then put back together and join to become a fully sorted list from in ascending order, okay? And so again, this list is only 1 element long, so using this condition at the top, we're not gonna quicksort it, okay? Because you can't quicksort a list with only 1 element, right? Because you can't sort a list with one element. So here we're just gonna return the less list here. So in the end, what we're gonna end up with is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that's how it works. I hope you like the algorithm. I hope you like the way I showed it. And so that's how you implement quicksort in Python. Before I end the video, I do want to thank you guys so much for 80 subscribers. This means a lot to me. I started this channel, I think in December of 2020, and it's grown quite a lot since then. I've made a lot of other videos, tutorials, a lot of exercises, so do be sure to check them out if you're new to my channel. So that was it for this video, and I'll see you in the next one.